And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
In the Rolling Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
What up, guys? This is Josh with Dirty Boot Sports with Chasing the Trophy, our fantasy football podcast. Today I'm going to be flying solo. Derek's not able to be with us on this pod. I'm going to be talking studs, duds, and overachievers for week 2 and give mine and Derek's starts, sits, and sleepers for week 3. So let's go ahead and get started. Big week for quarterbacks and wide receivers. So let's start with quarterbacks. Number 1 on studs was Tua. Man, 469 yards, 6 touchdowns. A lot of that did come in the fourth quarter. They had 4 touchdowns, I believe, in the fourth quarter. I mean, he had a great game. I mean, we've talked about, can Tua throw the ball? Can he throw it deep? He looked like he could in this game. Before I just jump on his bandwagon, I'd like to see it for a few weeks. But if he's out there in your league and you need a quarterback or a backup, I would definitely be going after him this week because he won't be there after this week. He's definitely somebody you can fill in if you need somebody. But great game. I expect a lot more games like this from him. Maybe not quite this good, but, I mean, there'll be a lot of games where he puts up over 300 with multiple touchdowns. But he looked good in this game. And then they played Baltimore, who also had an awesome game from Lamar Jackson. 318 with 3 touchdowns and another 119 rushing yards with a touchdown. He had a long touchdown, 70-plus touchdown run. I mean, Lamar looks great. He's throwing the ball probably better than he has in his career. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year. If you have him, you've got to be happy right now. Number 3, Josh Allen, 317, 4 touchdowns, 10 rushing yards. I mean, there's not a lot to say about him. Everybody knows he's probably the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. Going to be at the top every week. Keeps doing it. Number 4, Jared Goff, 256 yards and a big 4 touchdown game. These lines are looking pretty good. He had a great game. His wide receiver had a great game, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And he's another one. He's probably not one you want to start every week, but if you need someone for a fill-in, hey, he's probably there in your league. So, you could pick him up and put him on your bench if you need him for a bye-week fill-in or if something happens to one of your quarterbacks. And number 5, Jalen Hurts, 333, 1 touchdown, 57 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns. Been big on Jalen Hurts all year. I think he ends up as a possibly top 3 quarterback for sure, top 5. And Philadelphia is looking great, offense and defense. They're going to be a tough team in the NFC. I like Hurts. He was one of my picks this year, and he continues to show that he's improved. And this is his second year as starter. So let's go to duds. Number 1 on duds is Ryan Tannehill, 117 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Buffalo defense is good. So when you're playing Buffalo, don't expect your quarterback to have one of his best games. Their defense is tough. Their offense is going to be on the field moving the ball. Yeah, Tannehill have a rough game. And he's not known as a just great passer anyway. So we'll go to number 2, Matt Ryan, another one that had a pretty bad game. 95 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. We expected a little more from Matt Ryan than this. Indianapolis looks terrible this year. Their offense is not looking good at all. He was missing his number 1 target as number 1 wide receiver target. So, that definitely did hurt him. But 3 interceptions, that's pretty bad. Justin Fields, don't want any part of this. 7 for 11 with 70 yards and 0 touchdowns. So he only passed the ball 11 times the whole game. I mean, that is just crazy. He had an interception. He did have a rushing touchdown. Surely nobody was playing him, but if they did, he did get you that. But I don't want any part of Justin Fields or the wide receivers. We've talked. We was big on Cole Kmet coming into the year as a tight end sleeper, but man, you don't want no part of him. I've dropped him in my leagues. I had him. Mooney is not doing anything either. He was kind of one that people were keeping an eye on, thought he might kind of break out this year. The run, David Montgomery had a good game, but other than that, and I don't think you can consistently expect him to do that. So I'm probably trying to stay away from at least the quarterback and wide receivers in Chicago. Number 4, Jameis Winston. This really touched home for us Saints fans. 236, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. We're just hoping he don't turn back into the Jameis Winston that we knew in Tampa Bay. He just looks like he's having problems making decisions on where to go with the ball. And then when he does, he's throwing it into coverage. He's not looking good back there. So as a Saints fan and as a fantasy football fan, I hope he gets better. I'm staying away from him in fantasy, but I hope there's better days for Jameis Winston. And number 5, my man I've been talking about the whole year, Captain Kirk Cousins, 221, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. I was not expecting this, but he does not play well in primetime games. He's 2 and 37 in primetime games. Now, that would be like Monday Night Football or big Sunday night games. He just don't play well under the bright lights. Philly's defense came to play. They looked awesome. Darius Slay looked awesome. He took care of Justin Jefferson, which didn't have a real good game. I just think Philly's for real, and I thought Minnesota was going to be one of the better teams in the NFC, and if they are, Philly just thrashed them. So Kirk Cousins, I think there's better days for him. I think he bounces back this week and has a big game. I hope so, because I was big on him and the Minnesota, all their fantasy football players this year. So, if he don't do well, it's not looking good on what I talked about earlier in the year. Tom Brady, he had another below average game, 190 and a touchdown. This is not what we're expecting from Tom Brady, although he did play our Saints, whose defense is really good, usually has his number. He done a little better than he has in the past, actually, against the Saints. I think there's better days for Tom Brady. He kind of started slow last year and turned out to have one of the best years he's ever had. So if you have Tom Brady, I wouldn't be worried. I think he's going to get better. I expect him to to start out this week, probably with a little better game, but he'll get it going. So I wouldn't worry about him. And overachievers, number 1, Joe Flacco. Man, the old man has found something in New York with the Jets, 307 and 4 touchdowns, and they actually came back after an onside kick to win the ball game, and he threw a touchdown to win it. He's always had a big arm, so I don't know that I'd be running out to pick him up, but it is good to see him at his age still able to sling the ball. Carson Wentz, 337, 3 touchdowns, 23 rushing yards. That's 2 weeks in a row. He's one of the top performing fantasy football players so far this year. Can he sustain it? I'm thinking he could, be a big pickup for somebody. They're probably going to be having to throw the ball a lot, going to be in some close games, or they're going to be behind in games where he needs to throw it, and they don't seem to have a problem with him throwing it, 40 times a game. And if you get that kind of volume as a quarterback, you're going to put up numbers. And, he's shown in the past that he can do it. So if you're needing a quarterback, which I'm sure he's probably gone in every league by now, but if you picked him up because you needed a quarterback, you got to be pretty happy on what you're getting from him. All right, let's go from quarterbacks. We'll go to running backs. Running backs this week was kind of uneventful. We had a few that done pretty good, so we'll start with them. We'll go with the studs. Number 1, Aaron Jones, 132, 1 touchdown, 3 catches for 38 yards and 1 touchdown. Man, what a game. He's really, him and Chubb, probably the only ones that really had outstanding games as running backs. The running backs have kind of fell off compared to wide receivers, I would say, this year. But Jones, me and Derek were both big on this year. We actually had him, both of us had him as a start, I think, last week, which looked good for us because he put up a monster game. And, the 2 running backs for Green Bay, it looks like that's what their offense is going to run through. Aaron Rodgers is not looking like the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen in the past, and a lot of that's due to the wide receivers he has. So expect big things from Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon this year. I think you can play both. Aaron Jones definitely as a starter. A.J. Dillon, you could start him as your 1 or 2 or even a flex. But expect big things for those 2 running backs. And if one of them happens to get hurt, which I don't hope that on anybody, but man, if one of them gets hurt, the other one is going to be a absolute stud. Number 2, Nick Chubb. He had 87 rushing yards with 3 touchdowns and 3 catches for 26. This guy's probably drafted way too low. He probably went in second round, maybe low second round. Looks like he's going to be a top 5 running back. We knew Cleveland was going to run the ball a lot. They really don't have a lot as far as quarterback there this year. Everything's going to run through the 2 running backs. And Chubb, that's 2 weeks in a row he's had big games, and I think it's going to continue through the year. And that's another one. If one of those running backs get hurt, the other one's going to be an absolute stud too. But we kind of expected Chubb to be pretty good, but I don't think his ADP was what it probably should have been. But you never know until the season starts. Number 3, Tony Pollard had a pretty good game. 43 yards rushing with a touchdown, 4 catches for 55 yards. Definitely outplayed Ezekiel Elliott. We all thought that he would probably be able to surpass him this year. and it looks like he's on his way to do that. He's definitely good out of the backfield catching the ball. He's had some, big runs throughout his career. Not looking real good for Elliott. I mean, I don't know how you can keep Pollard off the field. But it's another tandem, a running back duo that if I just said it, if Elliott or Pollard gets hurt, especially I would say Elliott, and Pollard becomes the number one, or if he just surpasses him and becomes, gets more carries, he's going to be a great player. And I'll go number 5, Christian McCaffrey, 102 rushing yards, 4 catches for 26. He was a touchdown away from having a really big game. I'm not going to go much further than that. Running backs after that kind of fall off. And I'm going to go to duds next. Jonathan Taylor. You drafted this. Most people drafted this guy number 1, and deservedly so. I would have drafted him number 1, no doubt. I mean, I thought he was a safe pick, and he had 54 yards, 1 catch for 9 yards. A lot of that was just game flow. He's going to have better days whenever he gets his touches. He'll put up the numbers. I wouldn't panic right now on him. The problem is they're playing KC this week. They might be playing from behind again, so they might have to go away from the run again. So, he might not have a really great game this week. I'm sure they'll try to establish the run early in the game, but once Kansas City gets up 2 or 3 touchdowns, they're definitely going to have to start passing the ball more. So I wouldn't expect a big game from him this week, but I think, moving forward, he's still going to be pretty good. Dalvin Cook, 17 yards, 4 catches for 19 yards, and I think it's kind of the same as Jonathan Taylor. A lot of it was game flow. Both these teams were getting killed. They had to go away from the run. I think Minnesota, more than Indianapolis, will be up in some games to where Cook has a lot better games. So neither one of these I'm too worried about. There's going to be games where your players don't have their best game, and this is definitely one for both of those. But I wouldn't worry a whole lot about them. Devin Singletary, 19 rushing yards, 2 catches for 4 yards. Didn't do much. But, Singletary in the past, he's had these kind of games. He's not really a number 1 for me anyway. He had a good end of the year last year, but I don't think he's your number 1. He's probably your 2 or flex, and you might want to watch him and just see, if you're using him in the flex, you might want to look at other options. Chase Edmonds, 33 yards, 1 catch for 8 yards. Now, this is the one I would definitely be worried about. He hasn't done anything this year. Mostert looks better. He looks like the number 1 there. They'll still use Edmonds some. They're going to use the 2 wide receivers, and I think Mostert's probably going to get most of the rushing yards. Mostert, he was with their Miami's coach in San Francisco, so he knows about Mostert. Mostert is fast. I mean, he's a handoff away from a big play every time he touches the ball. And I think they're trying to use speed, and Mostert is definitely the faster running back. So Edmonds, I'm not playing him. And if Mostert's out there in your leagues, I would definitely look for him to pick up. Cordell Patterson, 41 yards, 0 catches. He split time this week with Tyler Algiers. They both had exactly 10 carries. Neither of them caught a pass. They're not on a great team. So Cordell Patterson, if he's splitting carries, it's going to be hard to start him. A lot of people that's got him probably want to go pick up Tyler Algier just in case he gets hurt. It would be hard for me to start either one of them if they're going to be splitting even. And then we'll go to Derrick Henry, another below-average game. He had 25 yards and a touchdown, which saved, if you had him, the touchdown probably saved you. You'd ended up with some points off of him. But, man, if I drafted Derrick Henry, which I didn't, I would be worried right now because he kind of looks old. He looks like it's starting to catch up with him. We all knew it eventually would. I mean, no doubt he's going to still have some good games this year. And the team don't look good. If they're down, it's going to be hard for them to come back running the ball. People's kind of figured out Tennessee, and they're going to put people on the line to keep Derrick Henry from beating them. So I think it's going to be a rough year for where he was drafted. Like I said, he'll still have some decent games, but if you got Derrick Henry on your team, you had to have drafted him probably in the top 5, and I don't think he's going to end up as a top 5 running back this year. We'll go with overachievers. Number 1, Damian Harris for New England, 71 yards rushing with 1 touchdown, 2 catches for 16 yards. He's never been one to catch the ball a lot out of the backfield, but he's had a couple of catches already this year, which is good if you own Harris. He actually looks like a viable fantasy football player, one that you could probably start. Everybody was big on Stevenson preseason, but it looks like, Harris is still the number 1 back there. And if you picked him, you probably got him kind of late. So, you could probably use him as your number 2 or a flex, and you got to be kind of happy about that. Number 2, David Montgomery, 122 rushing yards, 2 catches for 14. He had a big bounce back after a poor performance in week 1. I was really down on David Montgomery coming into this game after the performance in week 1, which I know that had a lot to do with weather. I think he only had like 15 carries, 122 yards. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. We'll wait and see if he's able to keep that up. But hey, big game for him. If you played him, you got to be happy. Number 3, James Robinson. He's kind of like Harris. You drafted him kind of later, and they was talking big on ETN, and it looks like Robinson might end up being the better back there. 64 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 catches for 14 yards. He's getting the volume for a starting running back. So, I mean, if you have him, you could probably, like I said, same thing as I said before with Harris. You could probably use him as a number 2 running back or even a flex at this point. Number 4, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 74 yards, 4 catches for 44 yards. Maybe this is his year. He's in a great offense. Other than Kelsey, that don't look like there's just one player that Mahomes is looking for. So he's spreading the ball around, which means CH might get some catches. He's actually running the ball really good out of the backfield. With Kansas City, you can't load up on the running back with the way they pass the ball, which is leaving some holes for him to run through. And he's had a couple of big runs this year already. So, I mean, if you drafted him, you got to be happy also. He's not really done it in the last 2 years, but this might be his year. All right, let's go to wide receivers. Studs, man, Diggs just continues to have a big year. Him and Allen both. That combination is deadly. If you happen to get both of them in the league or played both of them in DFS, man, you got to be happy. He had 12 catches for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. You know, after the first 2 games, if you had Diggs, you're probably 2-0 right now. I mean, he looks great. Now, they did have their number 2 wide receiver out, Gabriel Davis. Now, he didn't play, which would have probably took some of the catches away, but I still think he has a big game. Even he might have 2 touchdowns for 100 yards if Davis plays. But he looks like the sure enough number 1 so far this year. Number 2, Tyreek Hill. Well, might as well put them in here as this. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 2 and 3. Both with 11 catches. So Hill had 11 catches, 190 and 2 touchdowns. Waddle had 11 catches, 171 and 2 touchdowns. Well, when you have your quarterback throwing for over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, you know the wide receivers are having big days also. But for 2 to have this kind of days, that's you don't see that in fantasy football a whole lot. But you know, one thing that really caught my eye was Jalen Waddle had 19 targets in this game, which I know a lot of that was because they were down big, and a lot of it happened in the fourth quarter. But man, what a game for both of these guys, and you got to be happy, especially where you drafted them. Hill was drafted a lot higher, but where Waddle was drafted, getting 19 targets, you know, and I know he won't be able to sustain that. But if he's getting double-digit targets where you drafted him, I mean, that's great. Number 4, Amon St. Brown, 9 catches, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's 2 weeks in a row he's had big games. It looks like this is a future superstar in the league as far as wide receivers go. Detroit's offense is looking good. And he looks like he's going to be able to sustain this. And he's another one drafted, you know, where you got him, you have to be happy. Because he looks like at least top 10, possibly top 5. I mean, if they continue to play well. I really like Detroit this year to improve and take a step. They've got a great coach there. If y'all have listened to our podcast, y'all know we're big on Detroit this year. I mean, we're not expecting to win the Super Bowl or anything like that, but have a shot maybe to make the playoffs and just have a pretty good year this year. And number 5, Cooper Kupp. Man, if you drafted him, no matter where you got him, I mean, he could have went number 1. He is probably the most solid fantasy football player there is. I mean, he's almost identical every week. He's going to give you, you know, close to 100 yards, close to 10 catches, and good for usually about a touchdown every game. He had 11 catches, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. You know Stafford is looking for him. I mean, that's his number 1 go-to guy. He's looking for him first. And the way he runs routes, he's usually open. I mean, he's picked up right where he left off last year. So if you pick Cooper Kupp, no matter if you got him 2, 3, 4, wherever you picked him up, I think he went 5 in our league, in our snake draft league, which, you know, I would almost consider low, especially for what he's done this year and what he done last year. Duds. Number 1, Justin Jefferson, 6 catches for 48 yards. Darius Slay was on him like glue in this last game. Slay had a great game. Minnesota just wasn't clicking like they were the first game. What kind of scares me on this, and a lot of it has to do probably with the defense and Slay, but he had 12 targets and only caught 6. So Justin Jefferson, I wouldn't worry about him. He's going to have big games. I mean, he was even last year, he had some big games, but then he'd have one where it wouldn't be that great. I mean, they can't be great every week, but expect him most weeks to have big games. I wouldn't worry about him. Devontae Adams, 2 for 12 with a touchdown. So the touchdown saved you if you had him playing. 2 for 12 scares me. I mean, man, you got thrown to 12 times and only caught 2. He's going to have, he's probably the most talented wide receiver. They're going to find a way to get him the ball. Still don't worry about him. But, 2 catches, throw to 12 times, that's just kind of raise your eyebrows at that. Now, this one does kind of worry me because I was kind of big on this guy this year, Juju Smith-Schuster. 3 catches for 10 yards. Now, from what we've seen so far, KC is going to spread the ball around. So you never know from week to week who's going to be, other than Kelsey, and he didn't have just a typical Kelsey game this week. But I thought Juju might be the number 1 wide receiver behind Kelsey as a tight end. But I don't know now. He's probably going to be hit or miss. I think there might be some better days ahead for him, but, these numbers don't look good. I have him in the league, and I'm kind of worried. Jamar Chase, 5 for 54. Same thing. He's going to have better days. And number 5, this guy is probably not a top wide receiver, but he was getting a lot of buzz after week 1, and a lot of people picked him up. I know Derek picked him up. I think he said in 2 leagues and played him. DJ Chark was 0 catches. So if you picked him up and played him, you might not be playing him this week because 0, when you have a 0 on your team, that just kills you. I mean, even 1 or 2 catches, at least, you're getting a little bit of points, but a 0 just kills your team. Overachievers, number 1, Garrett Wilson, 8 for 102 and 2 touchdowns. Man, what a game for the rookie. He looks the part. Jets are big on him for a reason. Flacco was looking for him. Now, they were down and had to come back, which inflates numbers a lot. But he still looks like a great player, especially, if you're like in a keeper league or something like that, as young as he is, he might, for a future, he's probably going to be a great player. Number 2, Mike Williams, 8 for 113 with a touchdown. We all know Keenan Allen was out of the game, so they were looking for him early. Most of this all come in the first half. He might have had 1 catch in the second half. I want to say he had about 100 yards in the first half with a touchdown. I mean, people expected, he did have a huge game, don't get me wrong, but after his first half, you expected maybe close to 200 yards, but you'll take what you got from him. When Keenan Allen gets back, they'll be looking for him a lot more. And the tight end there looks like he's going to get some catches too. Still a big game for Mike Williams. If you have him, we're happy. Number 3, Amari Cooper, 9 for 101 and a touchdown. This was kind of a surprise to me. In our leagues, actually, people were dropping him after the first week. And I understand because Cleveland, they didn't throw the ball much week 1. They look like they're going to depend on the running game a lot. This kind of come out of nowhere. But if somebody dropped him, you might want to go pick him up. I mean, I don't know that you could play him every week, but there's going to be a few games probably. They get down, they start looking to pass the ball. He is the best wide receiver on the team. So Big game for him. Number 4, Nelson Aguilar, 8 for 87 with a touchdown. I don't really know what to say about this New England offense. I really don't want no part. You never know from week to week which wide receiver or tight end is going to get the ball. Mac Jones kind of spreads the ball around. He did get 8 catches, so, he was looking his way. You can kind of keep an eye on him. I don't know if he'll sustain this the whole year, but he did have a pretty good game here. Number 5, another rookie, Drake London, 8 for 86 with a touchdown. He looks like the best option as far as fantasy football goes for this Atlanta team. He had a decent game last week. He's a big target. Seems to be going to end up being a pretty good player for them. I'm sure you probably got him really late. There were some injury problems preseason. He kind of dropped in ADP. So if you got him late, I think he's probably a starter. I think I could see you start him every week. So you got to be happy about that. And I'm also going to mention Noah Brown. He was 5 for 91 with a touchdown. This kind of came out of nowhere, although he did have a pretty decent week last week. But him and Cooper Rush have a connection from spending time on the practice squad together. So, he might be one that you could stream next week if you needed a wide receiver and just see how he does. We'll go to tight ends next. Studs, Mark Andrews, big week, 9 for 104 with 1 touchdown. This was kind of another down week for tight ends, which tight ends, they're going to be up and down. You're just mostly hoping for a touchdown for most of them, except for, maybe Andrews and Kelsey. But the rest of them, you're just looking for a few catches and a touchdown. But number 2, Waller had 66 for 50 yards and a touchdown. Ertz had a big game, 8 for 11, 75 yards. A lot of that was because they was playing from behind, so there was a lot of volume there. And I will mention Mike Gesicki had 4 for 41 with a touchdown after going 1 for 1 yard in week 1. Same thing with Ertz. It was kind of because they were behind and they were throwing the ball around. So I actually still think he's going to be the odd man out in Miami. So I don't know that you can start him regularly. Duds, number 1, Kyle Pitts, 2 for 19. And guess what? Last week, same exact stat. He was 2 for 19. Man, this is not looking good because if you drafted him, you had to probably pick him up in the 4th or 5th round to get him. He's definitely not panned out so far. Surely there'll be better days for him, but you've got to be worried right now because you picked a tight end that high. I have him in a keeper league. I thought he was probably a sure thing this year, but it's not looking that way. Drake London looks like the better option there. Number 2, T.J. Hawkinson, 3 for 26. And 3, our man from New Orleans, Hill, 3 rushes for 14 yards after the big game last week. I think I kind of mentioned this. I don't really like Hill as a tight end because you never know when he'll hit. He might go 3 weeks without doing nothing. Then he might break away and have a touchdown or 2 in a game. But there's going to be no kind of consistency there. You're never going to know what weeks he's going to do it or which weeks he's not going to do it. I don't want no part of him. He did have a nice week 1. I hope he does well because of, a big Saints fan, but I just can't put him in my lineup not knowing, this might be what you get for 3 weeks in a row. You just never know. Overachievers, number 1, Tyler Higbee, 7 for 71. He looks like a player that you can start most weeks, on a good offense. Gerald Everett, same thing, 6 for 71. Looks like you can start him. Him and Herbert seem to have a kind of a connection. Herbert was looking for him in that last game, especially towards the end after he got hurt. So I think Everett this week's probably a pretty good play. I have picked him up in a couple of leagues when Cole Kmet didn't do anything for me, and was pleased this week. Logan Thomas, 3 for 37 with a touchdown. He's, if you need somebody, he's probably there in your on your waiver wires. So if you need a streaming tight end or just looking for one because the one you picked up's not done what you thought, that might be a good option for you. Now we're going to go to our starts, sits, and sleepers. Number 1 is going to be a quarterback outside the top 5. So this is going to be from me and Derek. So I'm going to go out of the top 5. I'm going to go with Tua. I'm going to ride the hot hand from last week. He's got a tough game against the Bills this week. His defense is great, but it's going to be like last week. They're going to be probably behind in the game. They're going to have to throw it. I can see some big yards. He might end up with an interception or even 2, but if he gets you a lot of yards and a touchdown or 2, you won't worry so much about those interceptions if they come. I don't know. I'd have to see, the rest of the year to know whether I would call him an every week starter. But, he definitely is on an offense that can score a lot of points. So we'll see. Derek, he has Matt Stafford as his quarterback. And I almost went with Stafford. He's got a great matchup, I think, with Arizona. They've been giving up a lot of points and a lot of yards receiving this year. Been in some high-scoring games, so I think that's a great pick also. And running backs out of the top 10, I'm going to go with my start as Leonard Fournette. With the wide receivers being out or injured, they're going to look to run the ball a little more. So Fournette should get a lot of volume. Green Bay gave up 122 yards to David Montgomery last week, who was not near the running back that Fournette is. So I think Fournette, you're looking at 100 yards probably and maybe a touchdown or 2 would be great. I think he has a big week. And my number 2 might sound crazy because I wasn't big on him, but David Montgomery, he looks better since the first game. He's getting the volume. They're playing a team that they might have a chance to compete with, so they might not be down so much to where they have to throw the ball, which they don't look like they're going to throw the ball much anyway. But I'm going to go with David Montgomery. The Texans, they can compete and maybe even have a chance to win that game. So this might be the only week I'll go with him, but I'm going to try Montgomery this week. And Derek has running back outside the top 10, number 1, Josh Jacob against Tennessee. And Miles Sanders against Washington. I like the Miles Sanders. I think he has played well so far this year. If he continues to get the volume and he dropped pretty low in drafts, on a great offense. I picked him up. He just kept hanging there, and nobody wanted him. Dropped a round or two, and I picked him up, and he looks like he might be one of the steals for me out of the draft if he sustains it. Let's see. Wide receivers out of the top 15. Number 1, I got Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy kind of banged up. I expect them to look for Sutton a lot. That offense does not look real good, but I still expect them to throw the ball. So I'm thinking Sutton's going to have a pretty good game. I don't know how bad Judy's hurt. He might be back stronger than ever, but I still think they're going to look a lot towards Sutton. And number 2, I've talked about this guy already today, Drake London. He's established himself as the number 1 pass catcher, 12 targets in week 2. On volume alone, I mean, I'd have to go with this guy. Anybody getting that kind of volume, man, he's got to have a big game. And Derek, wide receivers, outside the top 15, he's got Cortland Sutton, which I had too, and he's also got Rashad Bateman. Bateman had a big game last week, and I could see him putting up those numbers again. New England don't look that good. That's who they're playing. That's definitely not a bad. I actually contemplated putting him on my list at one time, but went ahead and went with Drake London. Tight end out of the top 5. I talked about this guy already, Gerald Everett. He's a big target that Herbert likes, especially with him being kind of banged up. He might not look to stretch the field as much and maybe just kind of throw the short pass to the tight end. So I'm thinking Everett could have another pretty good game. He's got Logan Thomas. We talked about him also. I wouldn't doubt if he don't have a big game. He's got a history of injury issues, but as long as he's healthy, he's a good tight end. Kicker, I have Brandon McManus for Denver. A lot of that's because their offense hasn't looked that good, so they might get down the field and stall and have to kick a field goal or a few field goals. And Derek has Ryan Succop, the Tennessee Titans kicker against Green Bay. Defense, I have Dallas versus New York, the Giants. Their D looked pretty good last week. We're not really sure about the Giants' offense yet. I mean, they've looked okay. I think their quarterback's probably good for a interception. So Parsons is all over the field. He looks like one of the best defensive players in the league right now. He's going to probably get a sack or two. So I'm going to go with Dallas. And Derek also went with Dallas. So he likes them also. Sits as quarterback, I'm going to go with Tom Brady. I think I had him last week also because he was playing against our Saints, which we knew it was going to be a defensive struggle. Mike Evans is suspended. Jones and Godwin's injured. You don't know if they're playing. Scotty Miller don't look like he can catch one if you hit him in the hands. So I think it's going to be a big running game, and they're going to play defense. So I'm going to go with him. And Derek's going with the other quarterback in that game, which is Aaron Rodgers. Tampa Bay looks like the best defense possibly in the league. So Rodgers, I think it's going to be a lot like Tampa Bay where they're going to run the ball a lot. Rodgers, his wide receivers, they're all suspect right now. We don't really know what we got there. So both of those we don't expect to have big games, probably a low-scoring game. Running backs to sit, man, I got Chase Edmonds. I mean, not only can I mean, I don't think you can play him at all. You probably want to stay away from this backfield. If you have to play one, Mostert, I like him better, but I think I'm staying away from this backfield altogether. They're playing Buffalo, and they're probably going to be behind and have to throw the ball. And Derek's running back is Zeke, and I can agree with that because he hasn't done well, and it don't look like he's even the best running back on his team. Wide receivers, I got Darryl Mooney. I mean, Chicago's not throwing the ball. They threw the ball 11 times last week. In the last 2 weeks, he's only had 5 targets. I don't know how you could start somebody averaging 2.5 targets a week. And Derek has DJ Moore versus New Orleans. So he's thinking the New Orleans is going to shut down more, and I can probably agree with that. Tight end, not only can you sit this guy, but you can drop him from your team, and I got Cole Kmet. Same thing as I said about Chicago, which most people probably don't have him on a team, but I just wanted to mention that as a sit and drop because I don't expect him to do much better. And Derek has Zach Ertz as his tight end versus the Rams. Kicker, I'm going to stay with these Bears, and I'm going to go with Santos, their kicker. You're not putting up points. You're not going to be kicking the ball much. So I'm going to go with him. Derek has Nick Folk versus Baltimore. Defenses to sit. I got both of these defenses in the Arizona Rams game. I don't want any part of them. That's going to probably be a high-scoring game. So, especially Arizona's, their defense does not look good at all this year. And he has 49ers against Denver as his sit for a defense. One more thing here. We'll go over our sleepers. My sleeper, which is a quarterback outside of our top 15, going with Jared Goff. He's had 2 pretty decent games. The offense looks pretty good. So I'm going to take a stab at Goff as being my sleeper. And Derek has Derek Carr as his sleeper, being they have the same first name. I think he went with Derek Carr. Running backs, I have Miles Sanders. He's kind of low. Derek had him as a start for him, and I definitely agree. I got him as a sleeper because our sleepers are below the top 20, and I believe Sanders was right around or below that. So I'm going to go with Sanders. He's played well this year, and I think he'll continue at least as long as he stays healthy to put up pretty decent numbers. And Derek has Cam Akers, which I can't disagree with that because he hasn't done much this year. Wide receivers out of the top 20 sleeper. Oh, I'm sorry. He has Cam Akers as a sleeper. He thinks he's going to do pretty good this week. He actually got more touches this week. Henderson and him was kind of splitting. Henderson might have had a few more touches, but it's looking like Akers is getting more involved. And like me and Derek talked about this, and we think probably by the middle of the year, Cam Akers might even take over more of the touches and more of the role as a running back. I think Henderson's never going to go away. He's probably going to be that bruising back that they use up the middle to kind of soften up the defense. But Cam Akers might be their guy out of the backfield that they try to get the ball in some space, where he can and try to run it in for a touchdown. Wide receiver outside the top 20, I got Allen Robinson I think that's going to be a high-scoring game between the Rams and Arizona. Allen Robinson caught a touchdown last week and had a few catches. I think his role increases every week, especially as him and Stafford start to get a connection. So I think he could be my sleeper this week. And Derek has Chris Olave from our New Orleans Saints against Carolina. He definitely got the volume last week. Him and Jameis, they weren't exactly on last week. They were a few feet or a few inches here and there from having a big game. But if he continues to get the volume, he's going to be a viable wide receiver this year. Tight end, out of the top 10, I got Logan Thomas, who Derek had as a start this week. Philadelphia, typically over the last few years has not been real good against the tight end. So I think he might have a shot at a touchdown and a few catches. Let's see, Derek has Hayden Hurst at New York. He seems to have found his place in Cincinnati and could be a starter most weeks. Kicker, I have Detroit's kicker, Siebert. Their offense seems to be a lot better. So they're moving the ball, which means the kicker's going to be able to have more opportunities. So I'm going with Siebert for my sleeper, and Derek also has the same one. So we have the same kicker as a sleeper, and let's see here. Defense. When I looked, we got defense outside I got Tampa Bay was kind of lower than I thought. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay this week. I mean, I don't know if that's so much of a sleeper because they're probably the better defense, one of the best, if not the best in the league. But whenever I looked at the rankings, they had them pretty low, so I'm going to go with them anyway. And he has the Eagles against Washington, which I definitely agree with. The way the Eagles played this past week, their defense looked awesome. Darius Slay looks like he's one of the better cornerbacks in the league right now. So that's another good pick. And I guess that'll about do it. Good luck, everybody, this week with their fantasy games. And I hope you tune in next week. Thanks.
This ain't how it's supposed to be. It should be just you and me.